Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to our morning coffee time for Thursday, September the 24th, I believe. How's everyone this morning? Grateful for fresh air. We got some good rain here last night, further freshening everything up. And there's more rain in the forecast for us over the next couple of days, though it may be convenient timing that things look good for our gathering this weekend, moving the firewood. So we'll see how it turns out. Some things seem more anicca than others, and the weather is one of them, at least where we live here. It can change rather quickly. If you don't like the forecast, just wait. And that's especially true of the longer term forecast here where we live. So I'm still feeling grateful for blue sky and fresh air. And hopeful that increasingly the people on the west coast of America will be experiencing that. I see a good amount of questions here this morning, but the live numbers are a little bit down, so we're missing a few of our friends this morning. One of the questions that I saw when I was getting everything sort of set up is on the theme of renunciation. And one of the meditations that I like to do comes from a verse that is at least in part on the theme of renunciation in the suttas. And it comes up in various places. And I thought to share it this morning as an example of what I mean sometimes about reflective meditation. So this is a nusaya, which I'll loosely kind of translate as a reflection or recollection. And this one in particular is on ahankara mamankara. Ahankara mamankara mananusaya. Here Ananda, a bhikkhu thinks, this is peaceful, this is sublime, that is the stilling of all activities, the relinquishment of all acquisitions, the destruction of craving, dispassion, cessation, nibbana. That particular formulation comes in a sutta where there's an exchange, I believe it's between the Buddha and Ananda in the Anguttara Nikaya, Book of the Threes. But you find it a few other places, sometimes slightly phrased just slightly differently. But as it sits in the suttas, it is a nusaya, a meditation, a recollection. And I think many people have come to meditation with this idea that it is a very discrete kind of technique about visualizing something or focusing on the breath. But there's good evidence in the suttas that there's there's a great variety of ways that one puts forth right effort for the means and the ends that are described in the various teachings of why it is that we put forth right effort, what it is that we're actually trying to cultivate through intentional effort in changing our mind and arousing, strengthening, and maturing various wholesome qualities of mind. I'd say one of the primary orientations that we have towards the world is always misinformed by tanha. We're always looking to the collection of acquisition, the preservation of acquisitions. We're looking to being, doing, having, becoming. Like that is the default orientation as misinformed by tanha and avijja. Or put simply, we're looking for completion and happiness in the world. And through various forms of self that we're striving for or striving to get away from. And as a reflection, this word acquisition can kind of sum all of that up. And to whatever sense that we have for the wisdom perspective, that's misguided, and that the various forms of self and the various things that one can acquire or hold on to or even experience in the worldly sense are still very much showing that characteristic of unsatisfactoriness. Like recollecting that wisdom frame, that wisdom perspective activates whatever level of insight we have into that and checks that outward flowing orientation towards that which is unsatisfactory. And by cutting that outward flowing orientation, we experience something that is peaceful and sublime. Instead of more being and becoming and more getting and more striving and worrying about those things, we return to a holistic experience of the here and now. Instead of chaos and movement, we experience stillness and well-being and wholeness. And for one engaged in the practice and the engaged in the training, we need to do this again and again. And this is kind of the ebb and flow of losing mindfulness in the bigger sense, not just in losing mindfulness of the present moment, but also losing the frames of reference that act as the foundation for bringing us back to that which is peaceful, still, whole. So the kind of movement of the practitioner is like losing that, and then through engagement in their spiritual practice or Dhamma life, being reminded or reminding oneself through practice, through the word of another, through sitting near teachers and mentors and other practitioners. And then we return back to this experience of that which is peaceful and sublime and still. So, Hirananda, this is peaceful. And it's like the Buddha says, Hirananda, a bhikkhu thinks. This is another feature of this. Hirananda, a bhikkhu thinks, or we could say reflects, recollects. So we're using our mind. This is peaceful. This is sublime. That is the stilling of all activities. The relinquishment of all acquisitions. The destruction of craving. There's no hungering or craving for anything other than what is. Dispassion. Cessation. Nibbana. So just think of that movement of the heart when we've been kind of caught up, and then we finally come to that place where we allow ourselves to sit down and let go and set things aside, let things cease. Whether it's we've been in some state of agitation or some conflict, or we've just been busy and engaged, and we finally let go. And sometimes when I'm in work mode, I can get pretty caught up, and I keep moving the goalpost. I think, well, if I could just get to this stage, then I'll quit. And I get there and I say, well, why don't I do a little bit more? Why don't I do a little bit more? It'd be even better if I got this done as well. And I just keep going and going. And occasionally there's even this little wisdom voice that's saying, quit already. When will you ever be satisfied? Quit already. It's enough. For a day, that's enough. But even if we do quit, if we don't understand those things to be unsatisfactory, we don't get the full sense of sublime peace and the full stillness. We're still hung up, still attached, still spinning. Even a night's sleep isn't a good night's sleep. The mind's still caught up. So that's one of my favorite little nusayas. And for those who are familiar with the recollections of Buddha Dhamma Sangha, we call those Buddha Nasati, Dhamma Nasati, Sangha Nasati. That Nusati is related to this word nusaya. So a remembering, a recollection of something as a theme for meditation. Ajahn, Buddhist teachings on renunciation, dispassion, letting go, etc., only for monks or nuns, or also for lay people? For us lay people, when we follow these, there is no more motivation to accomplish things in life, but we still need to take care of family or at least support ourselves. Would you still encourage lay people to cultivate renunciation as part of samma sankappo of the Eightfold Path? And if so, how do we practice it in a way that we still have motivation to do worldly things? So, excellent question, Sarada. Well, the Noble Eightfold Path is not just for monks and nuns. It's for anybody who wants to free themselves from dukkha. And so the Buddha's teachings on renunciation and dispassion certainly apply to everybody who wants to develop in goodness and freedom from suffering. This word renunciation sometimes sits with a little bit of difficulty in people's minds, but there are many suttas where it comes up in connection with lay practice. So it's absolutely clear that it's important, suitable, appropriate. It's not about being a monk or a nun or a monastic. How it integrates into one's life, it's going to be somewhat determined by your level of motivation to be free from suffering and to deeply engage in Dhamma practice, and also balanced out with your kamma and your relationship commitments. It's like sometimes there's a couple and part of the couple wants to practice the 8 precepts, and my encouragement is make sure you're doing everything you can short of needing to practice the 8 precepts in your family situation that you have, and make sure that it's agreeable to your partner and to your family. Sometimes just taking on the 8 precepts instead of the 5 precepts as a way of renunciation can cause more friction than is beneficial. But it's hard to give a general prescription for something like that. But speaking more generally, one should reflect on the limitation, the drawback, or oftentimes it comes up in the suttas as, the Buddha sort of points to in relationship to acquisitions and sensuality. The Buddha says that we should reflect and know the gratification, the danger, and the escape. And in connection with renunciation, the danger is like knowing the limitations of pleasure, the limitations of what kind of happiness acquisitions can bring to us. And then how limiting it is and how fragile our sense of well-being in the world is if it's overly dependent on those things. And develop some sort of sense of the escape from those, or learning other more sublime forms of supporting a profound sense of well-being in the world and happiness. And, namely cultivating the paramitas, cultivating the path. I've been playing around with the word modesty, moderate or modest, in your relation to the sense realm as a way or as a way to help people think about and maybe connect with these teachings on renunciation. Like all too often people think of it as a binary. Should I really practice renunciation, or would that be for my benefit? It's not all that different from some of the elements of the simplicity movement that exists in secular society in the West. It's like a realization that more stuff doesn't equal more happiness, and oftentimes it means more dukkha. And the emphasis in some of those communities are people that are focused on developing a simpler, happier, less chaotic life tends to be less on things that one can indulge in and own, and more so quality of life issues, space, time, relationship, simplicity, connection with others, time in nature. Some of that is fueled by the very same, I think, encouragements that the Buddha would give to a householder. And developing something of a taste for the ennobling and joyful quality of not being a slave to sensual pleasure or a slave to material attachments. A very interesting form of pleasure. Like you can be attracted to something, but fully aware that in and of itself, it doesn't satisfy. This is my reflection on don't confuse pleasure for happiness. And then the other element that's there in your question is, if we follow these teachings on renunciation, do we need to worry that the motivation to accomplish things in life might be interfered with or disrupted in some way that's going to cause problems for us? And I would say you don't need to worry about that. Some of that worry is fueled by our attachment. We image ourselves as maybe being missing something, missing out, or there being a lack of pleasure or joy. And one of the things that can nurture some encouragement there is like those who have developed this, they seem to be beings who experienced enhanced joy and pleasure and more sublime forms of happiness. It's like giving up lower forms of happiness for higher forms of happiness. It's one of the ways the Buddha describes it. There's an encounter in the suttas where, I can't remember if he's still a bodhisattva at this time, but he has an encounter with somebody, and they are looking at his simple life as an ascetic living in the forest with only the basic necessities, and knowing that he was once a prince. The question comes up, aren't you uncomfortable out here? Don't you miss all that comfort and joy and pleasure? And the Buddha sort of says, basically, no. He has a higher form of pleasure and a higher form of comfort, of access to that. And with the access to the higher, one doesn't miss the lower. Also, I mean, cultivating the path and cultivating renunciation and dispassion, it doesn't destroy our ability to do the good. So it doesn't destroy preferences or desires. It changes our relationship to them. So things that are necessary, appropriate, good, or inconsequential, we still have maybe preferences and even desires for them, but it's not tanha. It's not part of our well-being is not dependent upon those things in the same way when we're fueled by avijja and tanha. So my encouragement is, don't worry about it. You'll be fine. There'll be an enhanced sense of strength and ability to take care of the things that are necessary in life, and an enhanced ability to joyfully respond to those you're in relationship with, and to do good things and good works in the world based on your karma, based on your life situation, based on your talents and the opportunities that are there in one's life. And if you spend some time around people that are believed to have cultivated dispassion and renunciation deeply, you'll see they're still very, very happy, pleasant, seemingly normal people on some level, and occasionally very energetic and very engaged in doing good works in the world. In fact, I'd say for the most part, they've gone beyond selfishness, and they've gone beyond doing things for selfish reasons and worldly reasons. Or maybe merely for worldly reasons, I should say. So I see there are a ton of other good questions here today, but both my reflection and the long answer to Sarada's very good question has taken our time for this morning. So bring your questions back tomorrow if you can. And I'll see you here again for Friday morning's coffee time tomorrow. So leave this for your reflection today, everyone. Be well. Breathe easy and with gratitude and a sense of peacefulness without passion. Bye for now.